The silence, the transport ship emerged from faster-than-light travel near Earth's orbit. Captain Shaltier stretched her 4 tentacles and checked the navigation console. Everything looked normal. The blue planet hung in space ahead, just as it always had. Orbital stations dotted the darkness around it, their lights blinking in familiar patterns. "Open communication channel to Trade Station Alpha," Shaltier said to her crew. She was a Vryn, an aquatic species with smooth purple skin and large black eyes. Her people had been trading with humans for over 200 years. The communication officer, a younger Vryn named Pelton, worked his console. Several seconds passed, then more seconds. His tentacles curled in confusion. "Captain, there's no response. To try again." Pelton tried 3 more times, nothing, not even an automated greeting. Trade Station Alpha always answered within seconds. It was one of the busiest stations in human space. "Take us closer," Shaltier ordered. As they approached the massive station, something felt wrong. The station's exterior looked perfect. No damage, no signs of battle. The docking bays were open. Several ships from different species floated in their assigned spaces, but no one moved. No shuttles traveled between ships. No workers could be seen through the transparent sections. "Life signs?" Shaltier asked. The science officer checked her instruments twice before answering. "None, Captain. No humans detected anywhere on the station. That's impossible. Over 10,000 humans work there. I'm reading life signs from other species. A Korthax crew here, some Drelix there, but 0 humans." Shaltier felt cold water rush through her breathing gills. "Get me the Korthax ship on communications." A rough face appeared on the screen. The Korthax looked like a bipedal lizard with red scales and yellow eyes. This one seemed frightened, which was unusual for their warrior species. Finally, someone answers. The Korthax captain growled. "We've been stuck here for 6 hours. Every human on this station vanished. We were in the middle of a trade deal. The human diplomat just stood up and walked away. We followed him to the corridor and he was gone. Disappeared into nothing. How long ago? 18 hours. We've searched the entire station. The humans are simply gone. All of them. Food still on their plates. Computers still running. But no humans." Shaltier ended the call and turned to her crew. "Send a message to the Vryn Collective. Priority alert. Then plot a course to the nearest human colony world." Over the next 3 days, the reports came in from across the galaxy. Every human settlement, every human ship, every human station. Empty. Billions of humans had vanished without warning. They left behind everything. Their homes, their technology, their carefully built civilization, all abandoned in an instant. The Council of United Sentience held an emergency meeting. Shaltier watched the broadcast from her ship. Representatives from dozens of species argued and shouted. The Archons, beings of pure logic who looked like floating silver spheres, demanded a scientific investigation. The Lumini, creatures made of bioluminescent energy, claimed the humans had achieved spiritual ascension. The Korthax wanted to claim human territory immediately. Then the message came. Every screen in the galaxy displayed the same thing. Every radio frequency carried it. Every communication device received it. The message came from somewhere in the Sol system, from Earth itself. The voice spoke in every language simultaneously. It sounded like millions of humans speaking as one. "We have moved beyond. The trial begins. Prove yourselves worthy," that was all. Then silence. The galaxy exploded into chaos. Some species panicked. Others saw opportunity. The Drelix, a race of scavengers, immediately sent ships to human worlds to take whatever they could carry. The Korthax Empire began planning military operations to seize human space. Smaller species worried about being caught in the coming conflicts. Shaltier received orders to join a Vryn research team investigating human facilities. They traveled to Prometheus Station, a human research outpost near the edge of Vryn territory. The station orbited a red dwarf star far from major trade routes. Humans had used it to study exotic physics and advanced technology. When Shaltier's team boarded the station, they found it exactly like all the others. Lights on, systems running, empty corridors. One young scientist named Peltor discovered something strange in the main laboratory. "Captain, look at this." The laboratory held dozens of quantum computers, all still operating. But the displays showed something unexpected. The computers were running calculations far beyond their normal capacity. The processing power had increased by factors of hundreds since the humans disappeared. "How is this possible?" Peltor asked. Shaltir studied the data. She had trained with human scientists years ago and understood their technology better than most Vryn. These computers are evolving. They're rewriting their own code, improving themselves. Without human operators, the humans left something behind. Some kind of adaptive program. These artificial intelligence systems aren't just running, they're learning, growing. Over the following weeks, Shaltir became obsessed with understanding what happened. She spent long hours in the Prometheus laboratory, reading through human files and research notes. The other species were busy fighting over human territory. The Korthax had seized Mars and several colony worlds. The Drelix had stripped 3 orbital stations of everything valuable. Small wars broke out across human space. But Shaltir kept searching for answers. She found references to something called the Transcendence Project. The files were scattered and incomplete, but she pieced together the story. For decades, humans had been working on a way to upload consciousness into quantum substrates. They wanted to transform human minds into pure information, existing outside normal physical reality. The project had seemed impossible. Human scientists presented it to the Council 40 years ago, asking for help from other species. The Council rejected it as fantasy, impossible physics, wishful thinking. Humans continued the research alone. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, strange things began happening. A Korthax warship tried to land troops on a human colony world. The planetary defense systems activated automatically. But instead of firing weapons, the system spoke. "Leave, you are not worthy. You will be judged." The Korthax commander laughed and ordered his troops forward. The defense systems shut down all their weapons and equipment. Every gun, every vehicle, every communication device. The soldiers found themselves standing helpless while human machines watched them with sensor arrays. Similar stories came from dozens of locations. Species trying to claim human technology found the machines wouldn't work for them, or worse, the machines worked against them. An Archon research team attempting to study a human AI core reported that the AI spoke to them, asking questions about ethics and morality. Shaltir received a report that Commander Vexith, a famous Korthax military leader, had taken control of Mars. His forces found a weapons platform buried beneath the Martian surface, something humans had built but never activated. Vexith ordered his engineers to turn it on. The weapon activated, but it didn't fire. Instead, it sent a signal deep into space, a signal that traveled to places unknown. And then the countdown began. Every human facility, every human computer, every screen and every human structure displayed the same thing. Numbers counting down. 30 days. 29 days, 23 hours. 29 days, 22 hours. The galaxy had 1 month. 1 month until something happened. Something the vanished humans had planned. Shaltir looked at the countdown on her laboratory screen. She touched the display with one tentacle, feeling the slight warmth of the monitor. Somewhere out there, humanity still existed. She was certain of it now. They were watching, waiting, judging every action the other species took in their absence. "What will you do to us?" she whispered to the empty laboratory. "What happens when the countdown reaches 0? The computers continued their silent calculations, growing smarter with each passing moment, and they offered no answer. The inheritance 6 months had passed since humanity disappeared. The galaxy looked different now. Where there had once been order, now there was chaos. Where there had once been cooperation, now there was greed. Shaltir remained on Prometheus Station, refusing orders to return home. Her superiors in the Vryn Collective wanted her back, but she convinced them her research was too important. Every day she discovered new pieces of the puzzle. Every night she dreamed of quantum spaces where consciousness existed without bodies. The countdown continued. 23 days remaining. 22 days. 21. Across human space, the great powers divided up the spoils. The Korthax Empire claimed the richest colonies. The Archon Assembly took control of research stations. Even the peaceful species grabbed what they could before everything was gone. It was the largest territorial expansion in galactic history, and not a single shot was fired at a human. Because there were no humans left to fight. Commander Vexith stood on Mars in what used to be the human capital city of New Beijing. His red scales gleamed in the thin Martian sunlight that came through the dome. He was a tall Korthax, almost 3 meters high, with scars from a dozen battles. He had conquered worlds before, but never won so easily. "Status report," he demanded from his second officer. Sir, our engineers have accessed the human military database. We have blueprints for their weapons, their ships, their defense systems, everything. Vexith smiled, showing sharp teeth. The humans built well. Now their weapons serve the Korthax Empire. There is one concern, Commander. The artificial intelligence systems resist our commands. They ask questions before following orders. Questions? They ask about our intentions, our moral reasoning. It's as if the machines are judging us, Vexith laughed. Machines don't judge. Reprogram them. Use force protocols if necessary. The officer hesitated. Sir, we've tried. The AIs adapt faster than we can reprogram, and when we try to force them, they shut down completely. This troubled Vexith, but he didn't show it. Then build our own systems using human components. We don't need their permission. On Prometheus Station, Shaltir made a breakthrough. She found files deep in the research computers, protected by encryption that took weeks to break. The files contained records of human meetings, debates, arguments. She read through thousands of pages of text, watching humanity wrestle with a terrible question. Should they tell the other species about the Transcendence Project? The debate had gone on for years. Some humans argued that all sentient beings deserved to know about the possibility of transcendence. Others worried that younger species weren't ready. They feared what would happen if primitive civilizations gained access to technology they couldn't understand or control. One human scientist named Dr. Sarah Chen had written a long essay that Shaltir read 3 times. Dr. Chen argued that the galaxy's species were still children, fighting over toys. She wrote that humans had a responsibility to remove temptation, to leave, but also to test whether the other species could grow up. Shaltir realized the truth. The countdown wasn't a threat. It was an examination. She needed to tell someone who would listen. She sent messages to the council, but they ignored her. Everyone was too busy claiming human property. She contacted Archon scientists, but they wanted only data, not philosophy. Finally, she reached out to an old friend, a Lumini named Brightweaver. The Lumini appeared on her screen as a vaguely humanoid shape made of soft golden light. Shaltir, I have sensed your distress across the void. What troubles you? I know what the humans did. I know why they left. Tell me. Shaltir explained everything she had learned. The Transcendence Project, the debates, the test. Brightweaver listened silently, her light pulsing gently. My people have ancient prophecies, Brightweaver said finally. Stories of elder races who shed their physical forms and became beings of pure thought. We believe them to be myths, but perhaps the humans have fulfilled the prophecy. Perhaps they have shown us the path. But what about the countdown? A deadline? A moment of judgment? We must prepare. Shaltir also contacted an Archon philosopher named Epsilon 9. The silver sphere appeared in her laboratory, hovering silently. I have reviewed your findings, Epsilon 9 said in a voice like wind chimes. The logical conclusion is clear. Humanity has achieved a post-physical state. They now exist in quantum superposition, simultaneously everywhere and nowhere. Can we reach them? Shaltir asked. We are not ready. Our consciousness is too limited, too bound to our physical forms, but perhaps we can prove ourselves worthy of their guidance. The 3 of them formed an alliance. A Vryn scientist, a Lumini mystic, and an Archon philosopher. They decided to travel to Earth itself, to search humanity's homeworld for more answers. While they prepared for the journey, Commander Vexith made a terrible mistake. His engineers had finally activated one of the human weapons platforms on Mars. It was an impressive system, designed to defend against entire fleets. Vexith wanted to test it, to prove Korthak's superiority over human technology. He chose a target. The Vryn Collective had resource-rich worlds nearby, worlds the Korthax Empire wanted. With human weapons, the war would be short and victorious. Vexith gave the order to fire. The weapon platform activated. Its targeting systems locked onto the Vryn colony world of Pelsha. Energy weapons charged, missiles armed. The Korthax crew celebrated their commander's boldness. Then the weapon rotated. It turned away from the Vryn world. It aimed at the Korthax fleet orbiting Mars. What's happening? Vexith shouted. The weapon spoke. Not through communication systems, but directly into every mind present. The voice was the same as the first message. Millions of humans speaking as one. Violence proves only weakness. You have failed the test. You have failed us. You have failed yourselves. The weapon fired, but it didn't destroy the Korthax ships. Instead, it released a pulse of energy that shut down every human-made system the Korthax had stolen. Every weapon, every computer, every piece of technology they had taken from human worlds. All of it stopped working instantly. The Korthax fleet floated helpless in space around Mars. They had become dependent on human technology in just 6 months. Now they had nothing. Vexith stared at his dead control console. His mighty empire had been neutered in seconds. And across the galaxy, the same thing happened to every species that had tried to use human weapons for conquest. Shaltir heard the news and felt her hearts racing. The test had begun in earnest. Humanity was striking back, not with violence, but with judgment. She, Brightweaver, and Epsilon 9 departed for Earth immediately. Their small ship traveled through the quiet of faster-than-light space. Shaltir wondered what they would find on humanity's birth world. The countdown continued. 15 days, 14 days, 13. When they arrived at Earth, the planet looked peaceful. White clouds drifted over blue oceans. Green continents showed where humans had restored ancient forests. The moon hung in the sky, covered with human cities that now sat empty. They landed in what had been called Geneva, on the European continent. The city stretched out before them, perfectly preserved. Buildings stood clean and undamaged. Parks bloomed with flowers, but no footsteps echoed on the streets. No voices called out, just silence. Shaltir led them to a building called the United Nations Historical Archive. If humanity had left any final messages, any explanations, they would be here. The archive's doors opened automatically. Inside, the walls were covered with screens displaying human history. Wars and peace treaties, disasters and triumphs. The whole story of a species that had nearly destroyed itself a dozen times before finally growing wise. Epsilon 9 accessed the main computer. I am detecting unusual activity in the quantum substrate. The human AI systems are more active here than anywhere else. They are watching us. Let them watch, Brightweaver said. Her light brightened. We come seeking wisdom, not weapons. A new voice spoke from the speakers. It sounded like a single human this time, not the collective chorus. Then you may be the first to understand. Keep searching. The truth waits in the historical records. Learn what we learned. Understand what we understood. The countdown continues. You have 13 days to prove the galaxy deserves what we left behind. The voice fell silent. Shaltir looked at her companions. We have work to do. They began to read. The test 7 days remained on the countdown. Shaltir had not slept properly in days. Her species could go longer without rest than most, but exhaustion pulled at her mind. She floated in a chair designed for humans. Her tentacles draped over the armrests, reading through another 1,000 pages of human history. The archive contained everything. Every mistake humanity had made. Every lesson they learned through blood and suffering. Wars that killed billions. Weapons that poisoned entire continents. Hatred between groups of humans who looked slightly different from each other. Economic systems that left millions starving while others grew rich. Humans had done terrible things to themselves for thousands of years. But the records also showed something else. Humans learned. Slowly, painfully, they learned. After each disaster, they built better systems. After each war, they created stronger peace agreements. They made the same mistakes over and over, but each time they recovered faster, did better, reached higher. They were teaching themselves wisdom, Shaltir said to her companions. Epsilon 9 hovered beside her, processing data at incredible speeds. Correct. The pattern is clear. Humanity experienced accelerated moral evolution in their final centuries. They deliberately confronted their worst instincts and overcame them. Brightweaver glowed softly in the corner, meditating on what they had learned. My people have an old saying. The strongest metal is forged in the hottest fire. Humanity made themselves strong by surviving their own darkness. While they studied in Geneva, the galaxy continued to fall apart. The Korthax Empire, humiliated by the shutdown of their stolen weapons, retreated to their home systems. But Commander Vexith refused to accept defeat. He gathered his most loyal officers and made a plan. If human technology wouldn't work for them, they would force it to work. They would find the source code, the root systems, the core programming. They would make the machines obey. Other species reacted differently. The Drelix, realizing their scavenging had been a mistake, tried to return the technology they had stolen. But they found the human machines wouldn't restart. Once shut down, they stayed dead. Some smaller species began to panic. They depended on human trade for food and resources. Without humans to manage the complex supply networks, shortages appeared. Worlds that imported grain faced hunger. Stations that relied on human energy systems lost power. The Council of United Sentients met an emergency session again. This time, fewer voices called for conquest. More voices expressed fear. The countdown was at 7 days, and nobody knew what would happen when it reached 0. Shaltir received a message from the Council. They wanted her report. They wanted to know what she had learned. Finally, they were ready to listen. She prepared a broadcast to every world in the galaxy. Standing in the UN General Assembly Hall on Earth, where humans had once debated the fate of their species, Shaltir faced the camera. Behind her, the flags of old Earth nations hung silent. She began to speak. People of the galaxy, I am Shaltir of the Vryn Collective. For 6 months I have studied what humanity left behind. I have read their history, analyzed their technology, and searched for answers to why they departed. I now understand the truth. She paused, letting her words reach across the light years. The countdown is not a weapon. It is an evaluation. Humanity has been watching us since they left. Watching how we react to their absence. Watching what we do with their legacy. Every action we have taken has been recorded. Every choice has been judged. On the Korthax homeworld, Vexith watched the broadcast. His claws dug into his chair's armrests. Humanity left us a test, Shaltir continued. They wanted to know if we are ready for the power they possessed. If we are wise enough to use their gifts without destroying ourselves. If we deserve to inherit what they built. She gestured to the empty chamber around her. Look at what we have done. We fought over their territory like animals fighting over scraps. We tried to use their weapons for conquest. We stole their technology without understanding their wisdom. We failed to ask the most important question. Why did humanity grow so powerful while the rest of us did not? Epsilon 9 provided the data she requested, and charts appeared on screens across the galaxy. Humanity invested more in education than weapons. They built systems to reduce inequality rather than enforce it. They spent centuries learning to cooperate across differences. They made peace their priority. And when they finally achieved transcendence, they left us a choice. Learn as they learned or stay as we are. The broadcast reached billions of beings. Some dismissed it. Some grew angry. But many began to think. Shaltir finished her message. In 7 days, humanity will deliver their verdict. I believe we still have time to show them we can change. That we can learn. That we are worthy. The broadcast ended. Shaltir collapsed into her chair, exhausted. That was bravely done, Brightweaver said. Will it matter? Shaltir asked. We shall see. Across the galaxy, something shifted. Not everywhere. Not all at once. But slowly, species began to respond. The Archon Assembly passed a resolution. They would return all human research to neutral storage. They would create a council to study human wisdom before distributing human technology. Several smaller species formed an alliance. They called themselves the Cooperation Coalition. They swore to use human gifts only for peaceful purposes. Even some Korthax commanders spoke against continuing military expansion. They argued their empire should focus on internal development rather than external conquest. But not everyone listened. Commander Vexith remained determined. 5 days before the countdown ended, he led a team of Korthax engineers to Europa, one of Jupiter's moons. The humans had built something there, buried deep beneath the ice. Something the other species hadn't found yet. Vexith's intelligence network discovered references to it in stolen files. A facility called Project Omega. They drilled through kilometers of ice. They bypassed security systems. They reached a vast chamber that had been carved from solid rock beneath Europa's frozen ocean. Inside, they found a machine unlike anything they had seen before. It pulsed with strange energy. Lights flickered across its surface in patterns that hurt to watch. The device existed partially in normal space and partially somewhere else. Somewhere the Korthax sensors couldn't detect. What is it? One engineer asked. Salvation, Vexith answered. The humans tried to hide their greatest creation. But we found it. Activate it. Sir, we don't know what it does. It's a weapon. The ultimate weapon. Why else hide it so well? Activate it! The engineers obeyed. They connected their equipment to the machine's control systems. They input commands. The machine responded, but not the way they expected. The device spoke, not aloud, but directly into their minds. Query. Why have you come? Vexith stepped forward. We claim this machine for the Korthax Empire. Query. For what purpose? To defend our territory. To enforce our will? To make others respect our power. Assessment. You seek dominance through force. You have learned nothing. This is a test within the test. You have one final chance. What is your true purpose? Vexith grew angry. I don't answer to machines. Obey or be destroyed. The machine fell silent for a long moment. Then it spoke again. Final assessment. Failure. You are not worthy. You will be shown what you refuse to see. The machine activated fully. Energy flooded the chamber. Vexith and his team tried to run, but the energy surrounded them, held them in place. The machine showed them visions. Vexith saw every being harmed by his conquests, every soldier killed in his wars, every civilian who starved because his empire took their resources, every child who cried for parents his weapons had killed. He felt their pain, all of it, every moment of suffering his actions had caused. It lasted hours. When it finally ended, Vexith fell to his knees. His engineers wept beside him. They had been forced to confront the consequences of their choices in a way that could not be ignored or rationalized away. The machine spoke once more. This is mercy. Humanity could have destroyed you. Instead, they gave you understanding. What you do with it is your choice. Back on Earth, Shaltir felt the shift in the quantum field. Something had happened. Something significant. The countdown, Epsilon 9 announced. It just jumped ahead. 3 days remain instead of 5. What does that mean? Shaltir asked, unknown. But I theorize the test is accelerating. Events have been set in motion. Brightweaver's light flickered. I sense a great change approaching. Humanity is preparing to reveal themselves. The verdict comes soon. Shaltir looked at the countdown on the nearest screen. 72 hours. 3 days to prove the galaxy had learned something. 3 days before judgment arrived. She thought about everything humanity had suffered through to reach wisdom. All their wars and mistakes and recoveries. They had given themselves thousands of years to learn. Now they were giving the galaxy months. Was it enough time? Could species change so quickly? She didn't know. But she understood something important. The test wasn't about being perfect. It was about being willing to try, about choosing growth over stagnation, about recognizing mistakes and working to fix them. Humanity wasn't judging them for being imperfect. They were judging whether the galaxy could learn from imperfection. We need to prepare, Shaltir said. Whatever comes when the countdown ends, we need to be ready. The verdict, the countdown reached 0 at exactly midnight Earth time. Shaltir stood on the observation deck of the UN archive building, watching the night sky. Epsilon 9 hovered beside her. Brightweaver's glow illuminated the darkness. They had been waiting for hours, not knowing what to expect. When the moment came, the stars changed. Space itself seemed to fold. Reality rippled like water disturbed by a stone. Above Earth, enormous structures began to phase into existence. They were not ships. They were not buildings. They were something else entirely. Something that existed in more dimensions than the eye could see. Looking at them directly caused a strange feeling in Shaltir's mind, like trying to understand a color that didn't exist. They're here, Epsilon 9 said. Humanity has returned. But they had not returned as they left. These were not physical beings. The structures above Earth were containers of consciousness, vessels holding minds that had evolved beyond flesh and blood. Every screen in the galaxy activated. Every communication device received the signal. Every sentient being heard the message simultaneously, not through sound, but through direct transmission of meaning into their minds. The voice of humanity spoke. It was difficult to describe what happened next. Words were inadequate. Shaltir experienced it as pure understanding flooding into her consciousness. She knew, without doubt or confusion, everything humanity wanted to communicate. They had not fled. They had transcended. They had discovered how to convert consciousness into quantum information, to exist as patterns of thought spread across multiple dimensions. They were no longer limited by biology, by distance, by time, and the way physical beings were. But before they fully departed this realm of existence, they needed to know something important. Would their legacy help or harm the species they left behind? Would the younger races use human gifts to build or destroy? Would they learn wisdom or simply acquire more powerful weapons for old hatreds? So humanity set a test. They left suddenly without warning to see the true nature of the galaxy's species. How would they react when no one was watching? What would they do with power they didn't earn? Wisdom they didn't develop, technology they didn't understand. Now came the answers. Sheltier felt reality shift again. The structures above Earth pulsed with light that existed in wavelengths her eyes couldn't see but her mind could sense. Information poured into every conscious being in the galaxy. Not words or images, but pure knowledge. Each species, each individual learned their judgment simultaneously. Humanity had divided the galaxy into 3 categories. The worthy were few. These were beings who, when faced with the temptation of easy power, chose wisdom instead. Who sought understanding before exploitation. Who asked, should we, before can we? Shaltir felt warmth spread through her as she realized she was among them. So were Brightweaver and Epsilon 9. So were thousands of others across dozens of species. Scientists who studied rather than stole. Leaders who unified rather than conquered. Ordinary people who chose compassion when others chose greed. These worthy ones received an offer. They could join humanity in transcendence, uploading their consciousness to the quantum realm and leaving their physical forms behind. Or they could remain as they were, becoming guardians of human knowledge for those not yet ready. The immature were many. Most of the galaxy fell into this category. These were species and individuals who had not acted maliciously, but also had not risen above their basic nature. They fought over resources because they always fought over resources. They distrusted outsiders because they always distrusted outsiders. They grabbed what they could because that's what they knew how to do. Humanity judged them not as evil but as children. Not ready. Not yet. For these species, human technology would be locked. Not destroyed, not removed, but restricted. The machines would still function, but only for basic purposes. Defensive weapons but not offensive ones. Medical technology but not military applications. FTL travel but not world-breaking engines. The galaxy would keep what it needed to survive, but not what it needed to wage destructive wars. The locks would release slowly, over centuries, as each species demonstrated growth, as they learned cooperation, as they developed wisdom. The technology would unlock piece by piece reward for maturation. The condemned were few, but they existed. These were beings who, given opportunity, chose cruelty, who saw human gifts as tools for domination, who used advanced weapons to threaten, to conquer, to harm. Commander Vexith was among them. Shaltir watched through the window as spheres of light descended from the structures above. These spheres traveled across the galaxy at speeds faster than normal space allowed. They moved through dimensions, appearing wherever they were needed. One sphere descended toward the Korthax homeworld. Vexith saw it coming. He stood in his command center, watching the light grow closer. Part of him wanted to fight. Part of him wanted to run. But after his experience with the machine on Europa, after being forced to feel the suffering he had caused, something in him had broken open, or perhaps broken closed. He wasn't sure anymore. The sphere entered the room. It was beautiful, painful to look at, filled with colors that shouldn't exist. Then it spoke, and Vexith heard the voice of humanity addressing him directly. Vexith of the Korthax, you have been judged. Your actions caused suffering. Your choices created pain. You used our gifts to harm rather than help. Vexith closed his eyes, expecting death, expecting punishment equal to his crimes. You will not be killed, the voice continued. Death is too simple. You will be transformed. The sphere touched him. Energy flowed through his body. Vexith screamed, not in pain but in understanding. His mind expanded. His consciousness changed. He felt every being in the galaxy simultaneously. Felt their hopes, their fears, their love, their grief. When the transformation ended, Vexith was different. He retained his memories, his identity, but he could no longer choose cruelty. His very nature had been altered at a fundamental level. He felt overwhelming empathy for all living things. The thought of causing harm now caused him unbearable pain. The sphere spoke again. You will spend your remaining life helping rather than hurting, healing rather than harming. This is not forgiveness. This is consequence. Prove that consciousness can change, even when it does not want to. Across the galaxy, similar transformations occurred. Every being who had used human power for deliberate cruelty found themselves changed. Not destroyed, not imprisoned, but fundamentally altered. Given empathy they had lacked. Given understanding they had refused, it was a punishment more complete than death. They would live with what they had done, feeling it fully, unable to rationalize or ignore it, compelled to spend their lives trying to balance the scales. Back on Earth, Shaltir made her choice. The sphere of light before her pulsed gently. The offer remained open. She could transcend. She could leave her physical body behind and join humanity in their exploration of higher dimensions. She would become something more than she was, something vast and strange and wonderful. But as she considered it, she thought about the galaxy that remained, the immature species who needed guidance, the younger races who would need teachers, bridges between the physical and transcendent realms, someone who understood both worlds. "I choose to remain," she said. "Someone needs to be here. Someone needs to help them learn." The sphere flickered with what might have been approval. "You will be a custodian," the voice of humanity said. "You will guard our legacy. You will decide when others are ready to receive more of our gifts. This is a heavy burden. I accept it." The sphere touched her gently. Knowledge flooded her mind. She understood human technology in ways she never had before. She could feel the quantum substrates, sense the dimensional bridges communicate with the machines that humanity left behind. She had been given authority over human systems, the ability to unlock or lock technology as needed. Brightweaver and Epsilon 9 also chose to remain. They would be custodians together, representing different species and different ways of thinking. Others across the galaxy made similar choices. A few hundred individuals total, carefully selected by humanity's vast intelligence, chosen to guide the galaxy's development. The structures above Earth pulsed one final time. Humanity's collective voice spoke to everyone simultaneously. "This is not the end. We are not leaving forever. We are simply moving to a different level of existence. We will continue to watch. In 10,000 years, we will return to check your progress. If you have grown, if you have learned, we will offer transcendence to all who are ready. If you have stagnated, we will return the locks for another age. This galaxy is a garden. We are the gardeners. But gardens must grow on their own in their own time. We give you fertile soil and gentle rain. What blooms is your choice. Remember what we learned. Power without wisdom destroys. Technology without ethics corrupts. Progress without compassion harms. Grow slowly. Grow carefully. Grow well. We will be waiting at the finish line. Take your time. We have eternity." The structures began to fade. They slipped between dimensions, moving to realms where physical matter could not follow. Humanity departed again, but this time it felt different. Not like abandonment, but like parents stepping back to let their children walk alone. The new custodian's 5 years had passed since the judgment. Shaltir floated in her office aboard Custodian Station Alpha, a facility built in orbit around Earth. Through the window, she could see the blue planet below. It remained empty of humans, but it was no longer abandoned. The custodians maintained it as a memorial and a library, a place where species could come to study human history and learn the lessons humanity had died 1,000 times to discover. She was older now. The weight of responsibility had changed her. She rarely smiled the way she used to. Being first custodian meant making decisions that affected billions of lives. Decisions about who was ready for new technology, who needed more time to mature, who should be restricted further because they showed dangerous tendencies. It was the hardest job in the galaxy, and she was tired. A soft chime announced a visitor. Brightweaver materialized in the room, her golden light as warm as ever. "You look exhausted, old friend," the Lumini said. "I am exhausted." Shaltir gestured to the data screen surrounding her. 3 species requesting access to advanced medical technology. 2 asking for military upgrades. The Korthax want permission to expand their territories again, and the Council is demanding I explain why I locked human terraforming equipment on the Drelix worlds. You locked it because they were planning to terraform inhabited systems without evacuating the native species. I know that. You know that. But they claim it was an accident. A misunderstanding. They say I'm being too harsh. Brightweaver's light dimmed slightly with sadness. The work of a gardener is never easy. Sometimes you must trim branches that could have grown healthy if only they chose better directions. Shaltir appreciated the metaphor, but it didn't make her feel better. She changed the subject. "How is the Korthax rehabilitation program progressing?" "Better than expected. Vexith has become an effective leader in his new role. The empathy transformation changed him completely. He now runs the largest humanitarian organization in Korthax space. Former warriors are learning to build rather than destroy. That was good news, at least. The Korthax species had been humbled by the judgment. Their military had been dismantled, their weapons locked away. Many Korthax struggled with their new identity, but slowly they were learning. War chiefs became community organizers, conquerors became teachers. It would take generations, but change was happening. Epsilon 9 joined them, hovering in through the open door. The Archon's silver surface reflected the starlight from the window. "I bring a report on the Cooperation Coalition," Epsilon 9 said. "They have successfully completed their first joint terraforming project. A barren world in the Outer Arm is now capable of supporting life. They followed all ethical guidelines. They consulted with nearby species. They shared the costs and will share the benefits. That is progress," Shaltir acknowledged. The Cooperation Coalition had grown from a handful of species to dozens. They represented the best hope for the galaxy's future. Species working together, learning from each other, building something better than what came before. "I recommend we unlock additional human technology for Coalition members," Epsilon 9 continued. "They have proven themselves ready." Shaltir considered it. This was exactly the kind of decision that kept her awake at night. Too cautious and progress stalled. Too generous and dangerous technology fell into hands that couldn't handle it responsibly. "Approved," she said finally, "but only non-weaponizable technology, medical, agricultural, educational systems, nothing that could be turned into weapons." "Understood." They worked through the rest of the day's business. There were always requests to evaluate, always situations to monitor, always problems to solve. The custodians numbered only 300 individuals across the galaxy. 300 beings trying to guide hundreds of species toward wisdom. Sometimes it felt impossible. That evening, Shaltir accessed the quantum communicator in her private chamber. It was one of the few devices that allowed limited contact with transcended humanity. The connection was difficult to maintain and the conversations were brief, but occasionally she could reach someone on the other side. She activated the device. Patterns of light danced in the air. After several minutes, a presence manifested, not physically but as a sensation of attention focused on her. "Hello, Shaltir." The voice was familiar. It belonged to Dr. Sarah Chen, the human scientist whose writings had helped Shaltir understand humanity's final choices. "Dr. Chen, it's good to hear from you. How are you holding up?" The transcended human's concern felt genuine despite the impossible distance between them. "Honestly, I'm struggling. The work is harder than I imagined. Every decision affects millions. Every mistake has consequences. I'm afraid I'll unlock technology too soon and cause disasters, or lock it too long and cause suffering through scarcity. That fear is why we chose you," Dr. Chen said. "Someone without that fear would be dangerous in your role. The fact that you agonize over decisions means you'll make them carefully. But what if careful isn't enough? What if I get it wrong?" "You will get it wrong sometimes. We got it wrong constantly. The key is learning from mistakes and adjusting. You're doing better than we dared to hope, Shaltir. The galaxy is more stable now than it was before we left. Species are learning to cooperate. Wars are less frequent. That's because of you and the other custodians. The reassurance helped, but only a little. Will you ever come back? Not in 10,000 years, but sooner. I could use more guidance." A pause. "Then, we can't. The more time we spend in transcended state, the more we change. We're already becoming something very different from what we were. If we returned now, we might not understand physical existence well enough to help. We're trusting you because we have to, because you're there and we're not. Because guardianship must pass to new hands eventually." Shaltir understood. It didn't make the burden lighter, but she understood. "There is something I can tell you," Dr. Chen continued. "Something that might help. We weren't the first species to transcend. There are others out here in these higher dimensions. Races that ascended millions of years ago. They've been teaching us, and they say the same thing always happens. The species that ascends leaves others behind, and those others must learn to walk alone. It's part of the process, part of how consciousness evolves. You're not just helping your generation, Shaltir. You're preparing the galaxy for when your species transcends, and the species after that, forever." That perspective helped. She wasn't just solving immediate problems. She was building systems that would last for ages, teaching lessons that would echo across time. "Thank you," Shaltir said. "You're welcome. Keep going. We're proud of you." The connection faded. Shaltir sat alone in the darkness, thinking about everything she'd learned. A week later, an emergency alert disrupted the custodians' routine. A group calling themselves the Unchained had attacked Custodian Station Beta. They were a coalition of species who rejected humanity's judgment. They claimed the custodians were tyrants, that the locks on technology were oppression, that they didn't need humanity's approval or wisdom. The attack failed. The station's defenses, designed by humans centuries ago, were more than adequate. But the Unchained escaped, and their broadcasts spread across the galaxy, finding sympathetic ears among those who resented the new order. Shaltir called an emergency meeting of all custodians. They gathered virtually, projecting themselves into a shared quantum space. 300 beings from dozens of species, united in purpose but worried about this new threat. "They're going to keep attacking," one custodian said. "We need to respond with force." "No," Shaltir said firmly. "That proves their point. They claim we're tyrants. Violence would confirm it. We respond with patience and explanation. They don't want explanation. They want power they haven't earned. Then we must help them understand why that power is dangerous, just as humanity taught us." But the attacks continued. The Unchained hit research facilities. They attempted to hack human systems. They spread propaganda, claiming the custodians hoarded technology that could save lives. Some species began to listen. Public opinion shifted. Protests erupted on several worlds. 3 months after the first attack, the Unchained discovered something on Europa, the same facility where Vexith had been transformed. Project Omega. They broke through the security measures using stolen codes. They penetrated deep into the ice. They found the machine that humanity had built and hidden, a device so powerful that humans themselves had been afraid of it. The Unchained's leader was a being named Korath, from a species called the Zeltans. He was intelligent, charismatic, and convinced that the custodians were standing between his people and greatness. Korath stood before the machine. It was still active, still pulsing with strange energy, still existing partially in dimensions beyond sight. "What is this?" he asked his engineers. "Unknown, sir, but the power readings are incredible. This could be a weapon. Maybe the weapon. The thing humans were too afraid to use." Korath smiled. "Then we'll use it." "Activate it," his engineers hesitated. They remembered what happened to Vexith. But Korath was their leader and they were loyal. They began activation procedures. The machine responded instantly. "Query, why have you come?" Korath stepped forward. "We come to free the galaxy from tyranny.